this looks good.
Oh my god, this is
I
delicious.
definitely want to taste that.
All right. So I was scrolling through social media as I do, and I saw a very disturbing video of a man who was on a Facebook Live before he decided to kill his ex wife after he had just finished killing his ex girlfriend. And after he finished the deed, he then killed himself. So it was a double murder suicide in Maryland. And it appears by the video that the gentleman had been going through some custody battles that had really, really affected his mental and emotional health. He in the video he quotes saying things like, "I don't have no family, I don't have no one. They're trying to take my kids away from me," and he even describes the moment where he lost it and how unreal it was. And he describes killing his ex girlfriend, who at the time was pregnant and was threatening to take the child away from him in the way that his ex-wife had been doing in the custody battle, and he snapped. And part of the reason why that really shook me to the core was because a couple years back, I used to manage a WeWork space in Harlem, and we had a member there who was this dope dude. Like, he was actually one of my favorite people in the building, which feels eerie to say now. And one of the reasons he was my favorite is because he would always in with his wife, and they were this gorgeous family. And then one day I woke up in the news and he had murdered himself and his wife and his daughter, and then himself, like, and it was just a lot, and I remember, like, I didn't fully process what that was and what happened, and like how I felt really weird about the fact that I couldn't read it on him at all. That, like, in no way shape, like, if this was Law and Order and the cops would have came through to ask me a question about it before I had actually heard the news, I would have, and not told me what happened and just asked me to talk about this man, I would have sung his praises like I was trying to get him hired somewhere. Like, I would have said all the fucking amazing things, right? And I just, it scares me to think that people can carry something like that emotionally and be able to trigger into something so violent so quickly and no one pick up on it. So that was really what had me fucked up about it. And then it led me to believe, like, yes, there's this example in the news in Maryland, and there's an example that I'm talking about a couple years ago that hit closer to home, but this is not uncommon. And I even think about being a Dominican woman, and we're talking about the states now, but like in DR, like, first of all, Dominican Republic has like the highest domestic violence rates in the Caribbean, right? Like, and men often like end up like straight up killing their wives and girlfriends, like, and not just shooting them, but like just beating them down, like all sorts of awful things. Women who's been acid's been thrown in their faces, they've been lit on fire, like just like really, really violent shit. And it's disturbing. And I think that it's important to still talk about it, though. It's still important to see a news headline like this and take a moment of pause and consider like how something like this could happen and why things like this happen. So just wanted to hear both of y'all's initial thoughts on the story itself.
Yeah, it's sad. Like, it's tragic and sad, and I think that a lot of times, unfortunately, us men don't have where we're just not brought up right to express ourselves and how we feel, right? So, like, for example, if he's going through a custody battle, he might be dying inside about it, right, or whatever, and he's not gonna express that to anybody, and so unfortunately he snaps, and it's not to make excuses for anybody or anything like that, but this is why we need to create more spaces and need to have more conversations so that men can feel more comfortable with having and talking about their feelings and how they feel about them. Because this is real life. There's a lot of men going through custody battles. There's a lot of men going through these kind of things, right? So the same way that we have groups for all these other things, right? Like, it could be a men's group of men going through custody battles. They're able to express themselves in a safe place about how they feel and how they're going through, how they're coping, right? Coping, which we don't are we're taught to cope with, like, having drinks and smoke, and that's not healthy. That's not healthy coping. You know what I'm saying? That if anything, that leads to sometimes even worse, right? That may lead you to snap or do crazy things or do something worse. So it's unfortunate whenever I hear something like that in the news or hear about it. And like you said, in DR, it's something that it's the highest, and so many cases aren't even reported, right? That's another thing. So many cases aren't even reported, right? Because in the campo where things happen left and right, where those aren't even reported. Those aren't even people don't even know half the time what's happening, what's going on. So like I said, it's tragic, but at the same time, it's also something that pushes me as a man to like continue to do the work as far as just speaking up. And I know that people have to realize, like, you can lead by example, right? Like, if it's another man, another father or whatever, may see me being able to speak about my emotions and how I feel, that may lead to him being able to do that, and I've seen that with other men that I've connected with, as far as just having a conversation about something, right? It's like they feel comfortable maybe having the conversation with me now because they see me talking about it. Maybe they wouldn't feel as comfortable speaking to somebody else because, of course, you feel like you're going to be judged, or you're not man enough, or you're a punk, or you're this, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, man, like, the only way to stop these tragedies from happening is by continuing to just create the spaces for men, especially, to be able to just express themselves in a healthy way. There's a lot of men groups out there. That's something that helped me as well. Like during the pandemic, I joined a men's group that was based out of California, and we met, every Tuesday through Zoom, and I was able to connect with a community of different people that I've never connected with because I've never was never exposed to it, or didn't know what it was. So it was like, how it is growing up, right? Like, it's like, for me, it was like, oh, if I don't know it, yeah. Same thing how I do with food sometimes. I never tasted that before, so I don't want to taste it. I never had that, so I'm not gonna taste it, right? Like, that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's not like, expose yourself, learn. You know what I'm saying? Like, learn. You never learn. You can learn from somebody else. So, but it's a sad and tragic situation.
Yeah, I think, like, it's crazy to think about, and I think really the combination of talking about, the way this man was triggered, and then also just having Mozo on, who is a content creator who is creating these spaces and creating content that's for this community. To think about, like, our generation of men and, like, how many generations under us and all the generations before us who, like, literally just do not have the examples of, like, fathers and, like, men who can healthily express themselves. Like, I cannot think of a single adult, mature man in my life that I can say, like, healthily expresses themselves and, like, has an outlet to do that, or who hasn't, like, had to hit rock bottom to be able to then, flip it around and learn how to express themselves. And it's just so unfortunate. Like, because even thinking about me and myself, and, like, if I were to be a father, I don't know if I could be how I would be able to handle that, or because just the examples just aren't there, and that's not to say that, like, my father was, like, the best father that he could have been, and that he knew how to be, and I'll give him those flowers and whatnot. But it's just like, I think about my brother and, like, the things that he goes through with, his, children's mothers, and, just, like, the ways in which situations can get played out and roles can get, distorted, and people talk about other people, and people get accused of certain things, to certain ways be turned, have the judge, or have the courts, or have whoever, family members and friends, see someone a certain way. And just to know that, like, these men don't have, like, the outlet, like what even is the cure for that, like, or the fix for that, other than, like, having a Mozo, or having a
right
a Rick Herrera.
Because I think there's so many layers to this conversation, right? But that I think does really come back and center to the products of toxic masculinity, because I don't believe that most men, and I'm not even gonna say cishet, because like you can be on any part of the spectrum, and if you identify or if you have an experience that feels very centered in things that are products of toxic masculinity, it really, your identity doesn't matter if those things have manifested and are part of who you are and have and how you practice. But I think that like with men, there's just this constant pressure that really just comes from the same pressure that they then put down on other people, aka women, or people who don't identify as men, like that they put on them. It's like the byproduct is like, oh, I come from a generation of getting my ass beat, and so I'm gonna beat your ass. It's like they don't recognize that a lot of the ways that they show up and don't leave room for others to express themselves in their gender identity also suffocates them and keeps them to have to play to a specific way of their gender identity. And that's one thing, right? About being sensitive. But then there's this other layer of like, all right, but I was raised as a man to believe that my role includes being a provider. And then you have the situation where you're talking about custody battles, right? And you're talking about men who perhaps, and I can't speak to the life of this man and who he was, so I'm going to speak in a hypothetical. If I'm a dude who maybe didn't have the best relationship with my dad, or maybe I did, right? But for whatever reason, being a father to me matters very much, and understanding the kind of father I want to be and have and that's important to me is another layer. But then what are the things that block me from doing that? Maybe my job doesn't pay shit, right? Like maybe I don't have enough finances to do that, and so I feel limited by the circumstances that affect my finances. I am not in a relationship with the mother of my children, right? And we're in a constant headbutt. And so I feel like that person who is the mother, and mothers who get so much credit for parenting and like are put on a pedestal because they give birth in a particular way, which isn't always true. I'm speaking in a hypothetical here, right? Like, like that energy, like I have to battle against the fact that at the end of the day, I'm always going to be the ain't shit dad, even if I show up as a father, because women always win in these arguments, right? Then you have that layer. Then you have the layer of like, what the fuck are the tools even, right? Like gender aside, and like, oh, am I soft enough to be in touch with my feelings or not? Fine. Tell a dude, yeah, go be in touch with your feelings. And maybe he'll be like, fine. But then he might ask you, well, I don't know what that really means. I don't know what that looks like. Like, you mean play 2K with my boys and chill? Like, is that? And in some cases, like things like that do, but it's about the intentionality and understanding how you're using those tools, and not just mindlessly getting into these routines, right? If you want to be intentional about self-care, and if your self-care does include being on Call of Duty, then figure it out so that when you're on Call of Duty, you're really tapping into what that is for you, so that it does the work, and not that you just sat there for hours like a zombie and it didn't really matter either way, because you still hate your life, right? Like what's that labor? But it's not just men don't know what that looks like. Our community in general does not fucking know what that like, which is so tragic, because once upon it, we come of lineages of people who were experts at this kind of mindfulness and centering yourself, and it's been rebranded, and we see it come through so many white lenses that we think it's white people shit, and it's not white people. Let me tell you something, white people did not invent self-care. Okay, it is not a white people thing, it's white people marketing. But we have to be able to distinguish the two, right? But you add that layer on there, right? So now homeboy is like, now when I'm at the peak and I am actually having a genuine emotional mental breakdown, right, where I am about to lose control, the slope to that is slippery, and yes, it can be fast, but the more tools and precautionary things that you have in place as a person, the less likely it's going to end in you murdering people. And so for me, it's like there's so many layers to this conversation, and each one of these layers actually deserves its own fucking full, extensive podcast episode. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way we're going to be able to break it all down. But, I think one place to start as it relates to a case where we're talking about two people who are co-parenting and can't seem to get it together in a particular way, and it leads to something violent, communication really is at the root, whether it's communicating with your partner, communicating with yourself, communicating with your healthcare providers. Because like, hello, if you feel like you're fucking slipping, and again, I'm not speaking to him specifically, just in general, if you feel something's wrong, your doctors are there for mental health too, right? You can tell your primary care doctor, sometimes they'll ask you, oh, what do you do for work, Holly? And they'll ask you casual questions. They're not just trying to be chummy dummy. They are asking you because if you say a red flag, they're gonna write that shit down, and they're gonna be like, huh, I'm going to refer you to this because I think you need to see somebody because I think you need help, right? So like communicate. And I'm curious from you guys, what is your perception or what have you observed about relationships and the way couples communicate in relationships in your experience, both relationships maybe you've been in or ones that you've observed? And yes, romantic, but it could also be familial if it applies. What do you observe about communication in relationships this day and age?
In my family, I think the biggest thing with communication in my family that I realized, especially over the last like year or so, that's become way more evident is that the older generation definitely groomed us to not talk. You know, if it was something that could ruffle feathers or was different from, you know, what the family would be accepting of, like, then they just would not talk about it. And like, you know, you don't talk about it until it disappears and stuff like that. And it happens over and over and over again in any type of relationship within my family. And it's been something that I'm like, damn, like for a family that is so loud and has such big personalities in it, for us to be able to like really hold our tongue, because it comes from both ends. Like the person who is getting the critique might react to a certain way, or the person who is giving the critique or trying to communicate a certain feeling doesn't want a bad reaction, so they choose to hold it back. And so kind of introducing the idea of better communication and being able to communicate without the fear of ruffling feathers and with the understanding that like someone's reaction is valid, or you know, it's not the end of the world if they react a certain way. Not everybody's trying to attack you. Like introducing that to the family has been very interesting. And I don't know that I'm the person who's either doing the introducing. I don't know that I'm doing a great job of introducing it. You know, like I'm also engaging in the lack of communication. But I know that is something in general on both ends, both sides, a common theme throughout is the lack of communication.
And shout out to you though, Skills, for like trying to, you know, doing it, like, you know what I'm saying, like saying, recognizing it, which is the first step, and then putting it right, and then doing it. Now, I was gonna say trying, but you're doing it. It's the same thing when it comes to my family in a way, you know. It's like a lot of pride involved. I felt like it was like you're never supposed to show like you're going through something or you're weak or, you know, anything like that, right? Like that kind of stuff. And I understand, like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm not gonna go to a public place and be like, well, yeah, my mom is late on the bills and she's struggling. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna do that either, right? But it's like, what are my feelings about that, right? And why can I not express them to you, mom? You know what I'm saying? Like, or why can't you express that to me? Or, you know, that kind of stuff. For a long time, I thought I was great at communicating. You know, I thought I was great. You know, I thought I was great, and I realized that I wasn't, because I was just somebody who was just saying what. That's kind of where like watch your mouth comes from. Watch your mouth from Mozo. It's like it's not more of like watching your mouth. It's more of just like sometimes you just gotta take it in, whatever's being said to you, right? And then say what you're gonna say, but make sure you take it in. Don't just blah and say it without you know what I'm saying, that kind of stuff. And the communication with my family has improved a lot, and it all started with me having a conversation with my parents, where we cried and all that, because like I told them how I felt. Like I told them like how I felt as a kid. I told them how I felt, you know, and at the same time I also told them like I know that y'all did the best y'all did. Like my dad was raised by like a man who was like in the military, who was like, you know, very, you know, machista, right? Like very like just oozing with machismo, oozing with it, right? Like just like no son of mine is gonna be this, no grandson of mine is gonna be that, you know, that type of mentality, right? So like if you grow up with that, then how can I blame my father for having that kind of mentality when raising me, right? Like it. How can I be upset for my dad not telling me he loves me if his dad never told him he loved him? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not something that he was used to hearing. So like but it took me time and me learning and growing within myself to realize these things, right? But I think that this generation, I think we're the generation that we're breaking a lot of cycles, and even though we may not see the results right away, it's not about the results right away. It's about like my son will have a better relationship with his kids, and even whether he has kids or not, whoever he comes in contact with, he'll have a better relationship with them because of the fact that I'm communicating with him in a healthy way, and his mom is communicating with him in a healthy way, right? And the same thing with my daughter. The same thing with anybody I come in contact with. That's really the goal. It's just everybody able to communicate in a healthy way, and because we just live like in a result based where like everybody just wants to see results right away, like tomorrow, right? Like, oh, well, I spoke to my mom about this, but she still has her moments. Well, yeah, she still has her moments. It was been freaking 50 years of her life of her living the same exact way, and now you just told her yesterday how. You know what I'm saying? Like, give her some time. give them some time. Give them some time to like they'll get to it. And I've seen from when I was growing up to I see my dad now. My dad has made a drastic change to how he lives his life. You know what I'm saying? How he communicates and things like that. Is it the best? No, but compared to where he was to where he is now, and part of it is because he sees me communicate with my son, right? He sees me how I go about things. Like he's learning from me in a way. Like he's probably thinking it's like, oh. It's okay, you know what I'm saying? Because again, if he was never exposed to any other man doing this, and now he sees his own son doing this, it's like, oh, we are capable of doing this. We can do this. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to be this like this solid rock guy that's always just like a rock who has no type of emotional type of feelings. Like, you know, and my dad is an emotional guy. Like my dad has cried before, but he's the type of guy that he was always trying to hide when he cried. Like he didn't want to say what he was crying about. You know what I'm saying? But I seen my dad cry before, but he never told me why he was crying. He never said anything like that. And I'm talking about as an adult, because as a kid it's different. But as an adult, he never told me. Like he would just be like, I'm saying like, it's okay to cry, my brother. Let it out. Let it out.
I don't know that I've ever seen my father cry.
I've seen my dad cry, but I've seen my dad cry in moments of deep pride. I've never seen my dad cry being sad. And I'm looking up in the air because I'm like trying to scan my brain before I say that. But yeah, even like deaths that have happened adjacent to the family, like he's not been. I'm not saying he hasn't cried at all. I'm saying I haven't seen it outside of him celebrating his kids and me. Like I've made him cry because I've made him proud, type shit. So it's very different. But I even imagine that those tears come from a pride, but it's also like, you know, when like something has been so dark and deep inside of you for so long, but like just seeing someone gives you like a little hope or a little something where even if it's not you, like you're just like, damn, this is alive. Like this thing, this possibility lives. And I'm part of that because he's my father. You know, like him and my mom had sex and made me, so it is an extension of him. Like, you know, so like I feel like for him it is that. But will he ever sit me down and talk about all the hardships and all the things that got sacrificed? I don't know, you know, and I think communication, you know, to answer the question on my end, like I come from a very loving family where people are willing to have conversations, but sometimes people need to be dragged by their ear to be sat down to have the conversation. But once we're there, if that makes sense. And we're willing to be in that space. But sometimes the space is productive and sometimes it's not. And oftentimes when it's not productive, it is the masculine sides of us, because it's not even, the men in my family versus the women, because the women in my family, we are some fucking pit bulls. Like we are very aggressive, masculine women, feminine, masculine women. You know what I mean? So like everybody gets it. Everybody catches hands left and right if need be. But when those masculine parts of us show up in those conversations, that's usually when it goes left. That's usually when we're not able to navigate it and move forward. And, you know, we all talked a lot about family, but I will say what I observe in terms of communication with a lot of relationships, romantic relationships, which lends itself to this story, is just people holding on so tightly to expectation that are often tied to gender norms. Again, going back to this idea of men being providers and like how they're supposed to show up versus how women think they're supposed to show up, like causes a rift for people to have such a closed mindset that instead of moving forward and progressing in a situation that they're in as it fits them personally and how their situation works with versus how they think it needs to look like because they care that other people look at their relationship a particular way. And so, you know, they'll cause all the drama in the world because they want what somebody else has instead of trying to focus on what they need for themselves. Like the communication is like terrible. People tear each other down. People call each other out of their fucking names. You know, if you're a millennial, Gen Z generation, you might be throwing subs online with fucking memes and shit like that. Like there's just this deep toxicity that comes and people still want to communicate, but what they're communicating is that they are in such an immature place that the only way they can respond to the situation is by doing one of those things, right? But when you're talking about older generations too, don't resort or don't have these outlets of technology to like express feelings and feel validated in their feelings, sometimes that's where action comes in, and they want to be validated when they're face to face with somebody and they're beating their fucking face in, and it's like, yeah, the validation of I have power over you this way. You know what I mean? And you're still going to sleep in the bed with me tonight because if you don't, I'll beat your ass again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's people who have that kind of satisfaction. And I feel like going back to what I was saying about the holidays, even like people need to sit with themselves and really, you know, have conversations and understand what they need. Because if no one's intent is to harm someone, whether they fuck with them or not, then you should do a lot of work to be able to communicate so that you don't get to that place. It's your responsibility at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how fucked up your baby mom's is. I'm tired of seeing people tear, oh, because the baby mom, it doesn't matter. What are you trying to do about your situation? How do you want to communicate how you're feeling? And I'll say, nah, I don't want to, I'd rather not deal. And people come up with excuses as to why they'd rather not show up as their higher selves, but then still want to have the same level of complaints when they get low vibrational interaction right back at them. We have to meet each other where we want to be, not just where we're at. We got to be able to do the work to communicate up higher. And most relationships I don't see have that. And a lot of relationships, people think that the best way to solve that is to just stay in the relationship longer. We're going to work this out, but we love each other. But can you communicate with each other? Are you guys in a healthy dynamic? So should you be with each other? Yes or no? Like people need to be able to have difficult conversations with themselves to save themselves from mental breakdown. I don't think that we recognize that in the same way you got to do a maintenance on a car, we're our own vehicle. We have to be doing maintenance on ourselves constantly to not be put in a position where somebody could get this violent. So how do y'all practice communication though? Like in relationships and again, I actually am interested in this aspect in the romantic side with people when it comes to feelings and that sort of stuff. How do y'all communicate? Do you think you guys have any good tips for communication styles or areas of opportunity for growth that you're aware of and you're working
on? I think for me, when it comes to communication, especially like in the romantic realm, I know that I need to practice a bit more like assertiveness. And I think that can be related to like my communication in general. I tend to like shy away from communication that may have to be a little bit like more like I don't like uncomfortable. You know, I mean, I'm
confrontation.
Like, you know, I don't like confrontation, and so like when it's something that I have to like confront some type of confrontational communication, I get nervous and I don't like dealing with it. And so I think that like combating the nerves that come with communicating and like understanding that like the worst possible scenario isn't what I imagine to be the worst possible scenario is usually not going to happen, you know, and being confident that I am able to communicate in a way that like will be beneficial to both parties. I also think that when it comes to like romantic communication or whatever, I tend to have like an obsessive nature about it, and so like I'll be like assertive, but then like okay, well now you're not answering. Like you know, like I stepped into crazy a little bit. So
See, and what and is it crazy though? Like, is it crazy or is it something else? And I'm only doing that, and I'm not trying to put Skittles specifically on the spot, but I think that sometimes that's part of what I mean by we have these presets where it's like one of my least favorite things that I hear all the time, especially on dating apps, is, oh, you know, Dominican girls are crazy, so, you know, if you're crazy, let me know now. Ha 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 ha. Like, first of all, shut the fuck up, because you really just trying to fuck me. So I don't know why you acting like you give a fuck how crazy I am or I'm not. You liked me because you want to see what's up with this pussy. You saw the face, you thought it was cute. Now you're trying to see what the fuck is up with the pussy. Stop trying to act like you care how crazy I am, right? It's not cute and it's not flirtatious, you know. And to me, it's kind of like, I hate it because when they say that, I know what they mean. Like, I know what they're putting in the box. I know what picture they have in their head. I always give them a chance to answer. And I go, oh, really? I'm not aware of a Dominican crazy girl. What does that entail? And I'll ask them to describe to me, what do you think is actually crazy? Sometimes what they're describing is literally just me being like, oh, okay. So what it sounds like is that you're with a woman who has been conditioned to blah, 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 and it doesn't work for you. Is she crazy? Or is she a product of toxic masculinity? This is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like if people know how to tear things apart, like, listen, I don't mind a crazy girl Dominican joke, like, whatever, that's good. But like, if you really walk around with some of these principles that someone else is crazy, or you are crazy for having a train of thought and emotional progression that is clearly valid, happened. So it is real. It happened. You didn't orchestrate it. It happened. So are you crazy?
Nah.
Nah. You're not crazy.
You're not.
But yes.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Skittles. Were you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Yes.
I was gonna say that one of the things that annoy me the most, especially on social media, is like jokes where like that, like crazy, or like when a man makes a joke about like a woman's lashes, or like just anything where they feel like a man feels like they feel like they need to, like, to me, I feel like, why do you care?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, and it's, you know, it's a product of everything, but it's also because sometimes men are so insecure that they feel like they need to make the woman feel less, right? Or make her point out something negative about her, or try to make something that's not even negative, make it negative, so they can feel better about themselves. Right? Like, I hate those kind of memes, and I hate that kind of stuff. It really annoys me a lot. To get into the communication as far as relationships go, when it comes to like my wife, and I feel like the reason why we've been able to grow together is because as we've gotten older, our communication has gotten better. Like, I look back, me and my wife have been together for now almost 15 years. Like, as far as like together, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've been married 11, we've been together for a long time. We've known each other, right? And when we think back sometimes when we were younger, and we're like, we were just, you know, we were young, right? And we were still learning and stuff, you know. But like, there's people that are in their 40s and 50s that are still acting the same way you said about subbing each other on social media and doing stuff. There's people on Facebook. There's people that still do that at 40 years old, and whatever the case, you know, whatever age they may be. And it's part of, like I said, it's part of just not sitting with themselves. And you can't expect, like, if you feel something about something, right? You can't expect the next person to just read your mind and read your soul and know what's going on with you.
Right.
And you need to understand what is your real issue? Like, what is it? Is it something that she's doing or he's doing, or is it really something within yourself, and you're just taking it out on this person because they're the closest ones to you, or, you know, whatever the case may be? Because a lot of times it's our own shit that we're going through, and we just feel like we need to take it out on somebody else. Well, she's stopping me from doing this. You know how many times I've heard that from other male content creators? You know how many times I've heard that? You know, bro, Nah, I don't. I'm like, I told you, I don't want to hear that. Oh, it's hard to do this when you have a wife or a girlfriend that doesn't support you. You talking about the wife and the girlfriend that's probably taking care of your kids right now. You talking about the wife and the girlfriend that's working a job, and you know what I'm saying. Like, I'm sorry if she's not 24/7 supporting you. You know what I'm saying, whatever that you're doing, but she does support you because she's with you, and I'm sure she does support you. But like, what is support to you? Like, now there's another thing. What is support to you? Have you expressed what you support, what the support means to you, and what you expect her to support? You know what I'm saying? Have you done that? Have you expressed that, communicated that to her? Because maybe if you have, maybe she will show you that kind of support that you're looking for, right? But I think that for me, again, it's about, like you said, like you have said, it's about just saying which is when you communicate with yourself healthy, you're able to communicate with others in a healthy way, and it all starts with you. You know, I've said this multiple times. The relationship you should be working on the most is the one with yourself, and the same thing you do with any other relationship, you do with yourself. You know, sometimes you gotta self-talk to yourself. Sometimes you gotta tell yourself certain things. Sometimes you got the same way you tell anybody else, but it all starts with you, and I'm big on that. You know, and there's a lot of times when I sit down before I say anything to my wife, and I sit with myself and I say, okay, I feel this way. What can like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing for myself before I go to her and you know what I'm saying? Like, and that kind of stuff. But you know, at the same time, we weren't taught to communicate properly, right? We weren't taught how to communicate. So we also have to be patient with ourselves because we weren't taught how to communicate in a healthy way. Like, we're learning as we go. And that's what life is right now. But again, we're doing the work so that the younger generation, right, and the generation that we're in right now, we're able to do the work and just communicate better.
Absolutely. Because, you know, I feel like a lot of people, you know, and I'll close this out on this, like, a lot of people will look at a new story like this and just be like, wow, yeah, that's crazy. I would never do that. Like, I could never picture doing that. I could never, you know, and I don't think that guy necessarily woke up every day and thought, you know what I picture myself doing? I picture myself committing a double murder suicide.
I'm sure he said that before. I'm sure if you would have asked him, I would never do that. Are you crazy?
You know, and I think it's time that we start accepting that perhaps the generations before us have not collectively, any culture, any corner, collectively done a good job of teaching us how to understand how things like that could just pop up out of nowhere. And so we can never be too sure. We can never be too overly confident about our state because we never know what situation we're going to find ourselves in. So that's why our mental health, our preservation, our communication skills, right, our ability to be present in the moment, our ability to, you know, just, I don't know, just be self-aware. Or just be self-aware. It is important because even if it's true that you never learn how to make it so that your baby moms doesn't piss you off, like maybe that's not your area to control and try to solve. And all you have to do is figure out, how can I have a better response to the moments when my baby mom might show up in a way that I'm not going to appreciate. That's actually where your energy could be better spent. All good relationships have their flaws, you know, like there's no perfect dynamic. There's only you knowing how you want to respond to life shit. And if life shit includes you having a custody battle that's really ugly, then like, how do you respond to life shit in that way? And never be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to ask for help, because all you're doing is putting yourself in harm's way. And you have to know and believe that. You have to just know and believe it and trust it. And you know what? If later on it's on some shit where it's like, oh, you know, this motherfucker went to fucking therapy. Ha, your boys want to laugh? Let your boys laugh. Let your boys laugh. Let everybody have a riot. Do the thing. If you are better at the end of it, then that was the value of the price of somebody making a joke or whatever. Like, it's always going to be more valuable to commit to your highest self. It's always going to be more valuable in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, with that said, just check in with yourselves. Communicate with your partners and loved ones. And if you're ever having, feelings that feel overwhelming and you can't control, I implore you to seek out all the help possible that you can so that you can avoid being in a situation like this, because whether it's loving relationships or being a student at a school, and having an emotional outburst, or
Mm.
being just being an individual from a rural part of this country that doesn't really see people from other places, and so they feel more prone and triggered to kill them. There's like all these things, but it all comes from these same sources of lacking a practice of self check-in and lacking a practice of being able to communicate your feelings, and so you communicate them in a violent way. It's important. Do not think you're too good for it. Period. That's my PSA. No one is too good for mental health. No one has it down packed, not even the fucking therapists who get paid for it. Nobody has it down packed. Everybody needs to be in practice. Everybody. It's like hygiene. Everybody needs to be in practice.
Big facts.
Yeah. Well, Mozo, this has been a lovely, lovely, lovely episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us, where can we find you?
Thank you for having me. It's been it's been a great conversation, and I love everything we spoke about. Y'all continue to do what y'all do.
Thank you. Likewise.
And of course, we're connected forever. So
come on, primo, you already know.
But y'all can check me out. The easiest way is on Instagram at _TheRealMozo. Y'all can check out my podcast. It's called Watch Yo Mouth with Mozo Podcast. It's on, if you're looking for the visual, you want to see my face on a video, then you go on YouTube, you can see that. You just want to hear my voice, then you could go on Apple, Spotify, and all them other podcasting providers. But I just want to leave the audience and y'all with something, you know what I'm saying? Because I think it's important. Always be you, always be true, and always love you. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm leaving y'all with, because we need it, man. It's the only way to project that to other people, to the ones you love, people you care about, is by showing it to yourself. It's really the only way to do it.
Love. And Skittles, where can they find us?
You guys can find us at Ladies Who Brunch on Instagram, Ladies Brunch on Twitter, at The Real Skittles with a Z for me, and at Julie Sa with a H for Julie Sama.
Amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, guys. And until next time, brunche.